We talk endlessly about childhood trauma. We write entire books about neglect, abuse, and broken homes. There are podcasts, documentaries, and therapy movements dedicated to people who were hurt out loud. But there is this entire group nobody talks about. Almost invisible, barely mentioned. Not because nothing happened to them, but because what happened to them left no bruises. No dramatic story. No obvious wound. Just a quiet, slow erosion of something they should have had but never did. They are your colleague who works twice as hard as everyone and never expects a thank you. The friend who gives incredible advice but cannot take a single compliment without deflecting. The partner who says, "I am fine" 17 times before finally admitting they are not. Their psychology is probably the most misunderstood of anyone alive today. And once you understand where that silence came from, everything about how they move through the world suddenly makes devastating sense. Picture this. It is 1994. You are 7 years old. You come home from school with a drawing you spent all day on. You run to show it to your parent. They glance at it for maybe 2 seconds, say that is nice, and go back to whatever they were doing. You put the drawing in a drawer. A study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that children who receive chronic emotional dismissal, rather than outright abuse, show nearly identical patterns of insecure attachment as children in overtly neglectful households. Chronic dismissal. That means it happened over and over. And what does that repeated experience teach a child? That their inner world is not interesting enough to warrant attention. That their emotions are inconvenient. That the safest thing to do is feel less, or at least appear to. Picture this. It is 1998. You are 11. You do something genuinely impressive at school and come home buzzing. Your parent responds with, "Do not get too big for your boots," or "Let us see if you can keep it up." The excitement dies instantly. You learn to celebrate alone. And now watch what happens when that kid grows up. They become someone who preemptively shrinks themselves. Someone who achieves remarkable things and immediately waits for the criticism. Someone who built an entire personality around not needing anything from anyone. This is why they struggle to receive love without suspicion. Not because love was absent in their home, necessarily, but because the love that was present came without the validation that makes a child feel real. There is a difference between being fed and being seen. Watch it play out in a relationship today. Their partner says, "You look amazing." And instead of just accepting it, they respond with, "You have to say that," or "I look tired actually." They have become allergic to uncomplicated affirmation. Every compliment triggers an internal audit. Research published in the Journal of Adult Development identified what psychologists call positive affect intolerance in adults raised with chronic validation absence. Approximately 68% of participants who reported emotional dismissal in childhood showed measurable discomfort when receiving praise as adults. Their brain literally cannot relax into being appreciated. It treats compliments like a trap, which is honestly an exhausting way to be loved. That background explains why they work so compulsively. If you were never validated for who you were, you spend your adult life trying to be validated for what you do. The logic is simple even if it is mostly unconscious. Maybe if I achieve enough, someone will finally confirm that I exist correctly. Picture this at work. They are the one who volunteers for everything, stays late, produces immaculate results, and then goes home and feels strangely empty. A colleague mentions the project went well, and they think, "Yes, but I could have done more." The finish line keeps moving because it was never really about the project. A study in developmental psychology found that children who grew up without consistent emotional mirroring were significantly more likely to develop achievement-based self-worth, meaning their sense of value becomes entirely contingent on external performance outcomes rather than internal states. In other words, they are not workaholics because they love work. They are workaholics because rest feels like failure when your worth was never just given to you unconditionally. Someone should have told them. Nobody did. They also have an extraordinary capacity for empathy toward others and nearly zero tolerance for extending that same compassion to themselves. They can hold space for everyone else's pain with patience and grace. Their own pain? That gets minimized, rationalized, or buried entirely. You see this in their friendships. They are the one everyone calls in a crisis. They listen beautifully, say exactly the right thing, and never make it about themselves. Then later, alone, they are processing something genuinely painful, and their inner voice says, "Stop being dramatic, you are fine." The American Journal of Orthopsychiatry published research showing that adults with histories of emotional invalidation in childhood score significantly higher on measures of empathic accuracy toward others, and significantly lower on measures of self-compassion, compared to control groups. They got so good at reading the emotional room as children, because that was survival, that they became fluent in other people's feelings. Their own feelings became a foreign language they stopped practicing. Here is another trait that makes this group fascinating. They are deeply uncomfortable with conflict, not because they are weak, but because in their childhood home, expressing a need or a disagreement often led to dismissal, irritation, or emotional withdrawal from the parent. They learned that speaking up costs something. Watch them in a disagreement today. They will absorb enormous amounts of frustration before saying anything. They will mentally rehearse the conversation 17 times. They will soften, qualify, and apologize in advance for having a perspective at all. And then they will probably still feel guilty afterward. Research in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that adults raised in emotionally invalidating environments showed significantly elevated fawn responses, a stress pattern where the person appeases others to avoid conflict rather than fight or flee, even in situations that do not require appeasement. They are not people pleasers because they enjoy pleasing people. They are people pleasers because their nervous system learned that agreeable people are safer people. Their smile is not always joy. Sometimes it is armor. What makes them quietly extraordinary, though, is the quality of their inner life. Because nobody validated their feelings, they had to process everything internally. They became remarkably self-aware, perceptive, and introspective in ways that most people who received easy external validation never had to develop. They notice things nobody else notices. They read a room in seconds. They can articulate emotional complexity with precision because they have been translating their inner world into acceptable external language since childhood. The suffering forged something genuinely rare. A study in the American Journal of Psychology found that adults who reported high levels of childhood emotional dismissal scored in the top quartile for introspective ability and emotional vocabulary, two skills that typically require significant deliberate development in emotionally supported adults. They parent in ways that are almost a direct response to their own childhood. They overvalidate. They ask their children 17 times how they are feeling. They celebrate small wins with a ferocity that puzzles other parents who did not grow up starving for that exact thing. What they give the next generation is remarkable. Children of emotionally unvalidated adults often grow up with some of the richest emotional literacy of any group, because the parent was so determined not to pass the wound forward. The pattern breaks. Deliberately, painfully, intentionally. What they lose is the ability to simply be. To exist without earning it. To sit in a quiet moment and not feel the creeping sense that they should be doing something, producing something, becoming something. Rest feels like a moral failure when your childhood never taught you that stillness was allowed. And yet they show up, every single time, without being asked, without being thanked, without making noise about it. Because that is what they know how to do. Because that is what invisibility teaches you when you do it long enough. They are the load-bearing walls of every room they enter, the structures holding everything up that nobody notices until something goes wrong, and everyone suddenly wonders how the house was standing at all. And load-bearing walls do not get much attention. They are behind the paint, behind the picture frames, behind the warm and busy life that everyone else gets to live inside. Never once validated, never once needing to be told they were enough, or so they will absolutely insist if you ask them. The most unconvincing lie they ever learned to tell. If this hit home for you, if you recognize yourself in that 7-year-old putting the drawing in a drawer, or if someone you love lives quietly inside this psychology, share this video with them. Sometimes being seen starts with someone finally naming the thing that was never named. Please subscribe, and if you want to support these deep dives, hit that join button to become a channel member. There is a lot more where this came from, and every single one of these videos exists because you keep showing up for them.